Hello again, David Hosey from Hosey Consulting and Training. Today we're talking about big bore ARs, specifically 50 Beowulf, and my 20 years experience with, mostly as a hunting gun. What is a big bore AR if you're not familiar with them? The AR platform is extremely modular. You can have a different lower. This is in fact an old pre-band Colt target lower, and you can put different uppers on top of it. This is an Alexander Arms upper and 50 Beowulf. And other big bores you can do 458 SOCOM, 450 Bushmaster. There's a few others, but what I'm specifically going to talk about with the 50 Beowulf covers all these largers with something with larger than 4, and what it gives to the AR platform, and a very different performance profile. So performance profile, here I've got a 308, 5.56, and 350 Beowulf rounds. Full metal jacketed hollow point, and a 400 grain flat point. You can see the size comparison here on just how much fatter they are and much bigger bullets. Well, we got anywhere from 50 to 75 grain with 5.56, 110 to 200 with 308. 50 Beowulf runs from 200 to 420 grains. I got a 325, 334, and 400 grain. The 400 grain specifically soft point is what I've mostly used hunting. Why I show the 308 here is, we're quite familiar with the 308. This has got more energy than the 308, at least at closer range. At distance, this is a much better round. But this thing is smashy at close range. And in fact, with the soft point, I've had it on multiple deer and other big game animals open up to a full inch, or when I recovered the round. And similar sized animal, I shoot with this exact load compared to shooting with this load. This is dead right there. This sometimes dead right there might run 20-30 yards. Much better wallop. And that's one of the big advantages of big bore ARs and what they offer to the platform. So I mentioned I've had this for 20 years. Let me talk about the setup with this thing. It is something that was formed under the assault weapons ban. What it is a Colt target lower, and talk about AR prices and how they might have gotten high. But I got this at 2002 at a gun show. It cost me $500 just for the lower. And a little over $600 for the 50 Beowulf. It's a 16-inch, what they call an entry upper. And I've got a swan sleeve on it, if you know what that is, for old school rail systems. So philosophy of how I've set this up was in part influenced by what I was hunting with just before then. Was, yes, late 90s, early 2000s, Jeff Cooper and the Scout rifle. Yeah, that was the thing. And I was one of those guys. Noted the forward mounted scope and butt static magazine. So that had that influence in it. And a short handy close in gun. So why is this mounted forward? There's two reasons. The biggest reason, and why have I kept this a fixed buck stock when the assault weapons ban went away, is the recoil on this. If I blade myself or have a shorter stock, will pop me in the nose with the charging handle, if you do notice the charging handle. And if this is further back here, it'll give me scope eye. That's just the recoil on this. Don't think 223 recoil on this. Think buffalo gun recoil with this thing. So this is an old Nikon. I don't even know if Nikon makes scopes anymore. It's a 1.5 to 6 power with a 42 millimeter objective. Really good scope. My first 30 millimeter scope, and by the way, Leopold scope rings if you're curious. What I did with this and have it forward mounted like this is it's got a long eye box, and I can do good both eyes open like that Scout scope setup and still have a variable to get it out to about 4 power. 5 or 6, my eye box falls apart, but as you saw from the other range, this isn't a really distant gun. And that 42 millimeter objective gives me a really wide field of view. I wish something was still made like that, like a 1 to 6, a 1 to 8, with a 42 millimeter objective. Everyone's gone to 28 millimeters. It gives you a better field of view. It also really sucks in the light. And broad daylight, that's no big deal. And I know exit pupil and nothing better than 7 millimeters supposed to help you. A half hour after sunset, on a rainy day in dark woods, this thing will suck in the light, so I still have a shootable light against a black bear in heavy brush. It works well for that in my intended setup. Other things that I've added to it: first AR build, I wanted to have something other than an A2 grip. This Batwing wraparound target grip. here. It's comfortable. It's okay with light gloves. With heavy gloves, like a lot of contoured things, it doesn't work quite as well. It's also comfortable for carrying the gun all day and having just your grip here. It's actually very comfortable how the palms flow on it. The 16-inch barrel, that was a thing. No muzzle device during the assault weapons ban. This makes it a really handy gun, and I've just kept the fixed stock on it. I multicam this in 06. I was a very early adopter of multicam in 06, and the whole total camouflage thing and blending this with all multicam gear worked really well. Had Guncoat Northwest do that. I don't think they're in business anymore, but it was a really nice thing, and multicam was so new to them. I actually had to give them the pattern. They didn't even know what it was. So on length here, why don't I get it a variable stock or put a muzzle device on everything? So here's a 5.56 gun with a 14.7-inch barrel and a fixed muzzle device, basically an M4 length. The Beowulf is all of a 1/4 inch longer, and for a brush gun, this works really well. It is a little heavy. The scope, heaviest barrel, carrying the magazine on board and everything. It's a touch over 10 pounds, fully loaded and equipped. Packing, that adds up a little bit over a long day, but the sling holds it for you. Recoil wise, it makes it more controllable and able to stay on target and good follow-up targets, and just settles in well. And then the 3-point sling on how I've set it up, or excuse me, 3-point sling. Why don't I use a modern 2-point? I set this up early GWAT. I was carrying 3-point slings. It was my issue sling. I was used to it, and I have not, for a hunting gun, I haven't done a lot of ambidextrous work with this. Let me transition and show you this native environment with how that whole total camouflage idea works and what this is meant for. And then we'll talk about experience with it. So this environment shows off why I built this gun the specific way I did. And it's set up with the camouflage and the scope. While I'm here on some extended family property in the Willamette Valley, I spend a lot of time hunting, and it's where I grew up, and where this was made for is the hills of southwestern Oregon. And wooded, rugged, short-range shots. Also, unfortunately, a history of illegal activity in the public woods. And this kind of total camouflage where the gun blends into me, and because most people, when they see a black gun, and focus on that, this all blends in, and it gives them a few seconds for them to figure out what I'm doing, which gives me a few seconds to react. And you think that's LARPing, I'm scaring people in the woods. I've come across poachers, people maybe not up to no good. You know, they said when marijuana get legalized, it'd be less illegal growing in the public forest. It's worse. I don't go looking for that. I'm there for the bear or the elk. But I'll still sometimes come across it. Dressing like this allows me to see sketchy stuff and decide I don't want any part of that and leave without them knowing I'm there. So it's not LARPing if you're doing it in real life, and that's a little dangerous, but you know, a little danger in your life is occasionally fun, and I enjoy that kind of thing. I don't look for the trouble. I'm there for bear, but this works well. So why this is set up for the 1.5, I'm running a 1.5 power here, is I might get a 50-yard shot going in here. And I've gotten deer out of this woods right behind me. I've gotten several deer within 100 yards of the spot. I've been looking this for a cougar sighting recently. So again, it's something I do not only when I go distance, but week to week life. So the scope with this setup, it sucks in a lot of light with this, which gives me an extra half hour in mornings and evenings, and a really bright field of view, and a bit wider field of view with the eye box and my field of view here than you can find on conventional low power scopes. I really wish they still made this and even modified it a little bit. But we'll go over shooting, do some more comparisons on this, but this is the why for this. A brush gun in this, and the other thing is, if I'm firing like a 308 round, it might hit this and get slightly deflected. I might get some deflection off this with a 50 or a 400 grain 50 caliber round, but less. And that allows me a more solid and reliable hit. And then also, I'm not necessarily wanting to do long follow-up on a blood trail in this kind of environment. A round that will anchor them right now is great. Happiness is a short blood trail. So here at 50 yards, laser rangefinder is key to using this. I'll say that repetitively. It has a 50-100 zero, not a 50-200, 50-100. And then it starts to drop. So here at 50, solid hit on 10-inch steel right at the top where I was aiming. We'll now go back to 100 and see what we can do next. Also, notice how I rocked with that recoil. There's something to this thing. Here, go walk down at the plate there. So, that takes 308 hits all the time and doesn't fall over. The kinetic energy of mass in this thing can knock things down. At the end, we'll look at all of our hits and everything. I'll start switching to the larger target because it can simply not get knocked over by this. Wow, that thing is, my steel is going like this. That's what the hit gets. So, while the laser rangefinder is key to this, and my little cheat sheet I have in my scope cap, I'm at 200 yards. This is an 18-inch drop from here. At 150, it's a 4-inch drop. At 250, it's 28 inches. So if I'm off on my estimate, that's a 2-foot difference. For social work, that's not as much of a problem. Just wanted to get somebody to have a fight. For hunting and happiness is a short blood trail, and especially when you're like you fall up against dangerous game, you got to know the range on this. This 5.56 carbine, not a problem. From pretty much muzzle to close to 300, I hardly have to vary my hold at all. A lot of people think with an AR it's this, and this is most ARs. With the big bores, you got to think different. You got to think more 19th century buffalo gun ballistics. It's going to have an arc like this. We'll go back to 300 and show that off even more. Okay, got the splash on that. The wind, if you can see what's going on here, is affecting some to a degree. Also the way of the ground. But 300 yards is really beyond what this can do for a hunting rifle. For social work and suppressing somebody, that would be okay. For happiness being a short blood trail, bad. So I look at this as a 200 yard and in gun for what I do it with. And I just have those limitations when I go in it or hunt in ground that allows that. Okay, for 1,500 yard target. So this was 50. I took a little chunk out of the edge of that there. This was 100. This is what knocked this over. You can see the amount of force that required at the rock back and forth to do that. The deviation and up and down here is more than me shooting offhand and then kneeling than 1,500 yards zero otherwise. So 1,500 yards, fairly close to the same. I've done it a paper in the past. Going here, 200 yards, I was holding here. 300 yards, I was holding up here and into the wind a bit. So if I was doing social work for like suppression or something, good. Hunting, no, this gun is just not that. If you put a precision rifle scope on it and maybe did it with a mill reticle, you can do that, but the way I've got this set up is low light. So with its limitations, 200 yards and a laser rangefinder, even to know what you want there, because with this I would have to perhaps even hold off hair on a bear or an elk to get a good shot, or just on the edge of it, depending on the size of the animal. We'll go and back wrap this all up. So what has this done for me with 20 years? We've talked about how I've set it up everything else, its philosophy of how I use it in the woods, it's been a niche hunting rifle. Niche is the way to put this otherwise. Bill Alexander, founded Alexander Arms, gave us the 6.5 Grendel and the 50 Beowulf. Both of them have 7.62 by 39 bolts and funny rebated rim on this. But what does that niche do? It gives me a short range smashy gun. With the soft points here, I get 1 inch expansion. What does that mean? Well, when I recover the bullets, that means the animal drops right there. I see an animal at close range, and I've shot animals within 5 yards, like 15 feet with this. I don't think I've shot one past 100 with it. 90% of them have been dead right there. It just drops them like that. But you're getting whoop, old school ballistics on it, especially with the 400 grain I use. But I get that 1 inch expansion on the round. I can put the 308 on a similar animal with a 1 inch spot. That animal will move a little longer and not drop as quickly on average. Sometimes it'll still be dead right there, but almost same bullet placement, same size animal, probably related to the animal. I shot it in the same woods. So other things, the shorty magazines I've been using, how this works for magazines. I use pre-band 10 round magazines here, and these will hold 7 single stack straight rounds with it. But what I did is I took 2 empty cartridges, taped them up, and put them below the follower, and that allows to make it a 5 round magazine for what's legal in hunting. You saw me practicing with the 5 rounds. I'm practicing if I have to fight while hunting, or the bears get a bit more aggressive than I thought they would. But within that niche, it works really well. Modern magazines, they make some special adapted for them. While you can use the old aluminum green follower 30 rounders, they'll get 13 out of a single stack. Your modern polymer ones, Magpul, Lancer, the followers, and the magazine body just won't work. So niche gun with a bit more specialty equipment. I've got less than probably 1,000 rounds on it, but my tens of thousands of rounds on the AR platform apply to this as long as I remember the ballistics, and I've got a cheap sheet written on my scope cap in case I forget it. For me, for a hunting round, this has worked really well in a hunting gun, and it means my tactical training and my hunting training overlap fairly well. And also, you always get that you can't hunt with a 223. With the big bore ARs, it's hard to get a bigger round stuffed into this size of gun. You can kind of do lever guns or something like that. It's not a 50 BMG. Don't think that. It's more 19th century buffalo gun. Think 50, 70, 45, 70 for what you're looking and what this does. But for that, it's a good solid platform. It's worked well for me, and I'm quite happy with it. And it's probably seen a bear hunt coming this late summer, fall. If you got any questions or comments about how this all has worked for me, or anything I didn't cover, feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you for your time and consideration. Good day. Quick question. This is 5.56. You know, like 5.56 and 3 blackout guns, can you accidentally load them with each other? Well, you can't load a 50 Beowulf into a 5.56. It just won't fit. And on 50 Beowulf with 5.56, whoop, there goes the round out it. It actually, the whole cartridge will go out the barrel. It's so big.